Hello and welcome to Clergy Conversations on Coping with COVID. I am the Reverend Melanie Carey. I'm the lead pastor of the Nardin Park United Methodist Church in Farmington Hills, Michigan. And I'm so happy today to be joined by three other clergy persons who have called Nardin Park their church home. We have the Reverend Debbie Schunemann. We have Reverend Susan Defoe Dunlap and Reverend Marshall Dunlap. So welcome. We're so blessed to have you with us. And so today we're going to talk about, as people of faith, coping with this pandemic that we're all living through. And so I want to start with Marshall and Susan. And could you just tell us a little bit about, what you're doing to cope?
I find that I'm coping well by staying home. That for me, feels like a very safe place. And so as long as I stay home, I really feel very confident. The thing that shows that I'm stressed is the fact that I don't sleep much very well anymore. But other than that, during the days, I seem to do just fine.
Of the two of us, Susan is the deeper introvert. So that's the way she copes. The way I cope is calling people on the phone that I haven't talked to in a long time. And sometimes I'm not sure they're going to be happy to hear from me because it's been a long time. And invariably, it's just been lots of fun to reconnect. And that's my primary coping mechanism.
And can you tell us, so are you going out at all, or are you just staying home mostly? Do you go out and do some grocery shopping?
We're mostly at home. We do the shopping service that the church has provided was great for us. But then we decided other people probably needed it more than we do. And we've been doing the Kroger curbside pickup, and that's been working great. Although we did have some fun this last weekend when they put someone else's groceries in the back of our car. We did discover that pretty quickly and got them to the right place. The person next door to us who owned those groceries was a little concerned for a while, but that all worked out. And we also find ourselves laughing more than we might otherwise. You got to kind of laugh to keep from crying sometimes, but we find ourselves laughing a lot.
Laughter really is a way to cope, isn't it? So on a more serious note, one of the things that we've talked about as the clergy at Nardin Park is how this pandemic really has forced all of us, whether we like it or not, to confront death, the reality of it, whether it's something that we could face with the virus, or people that we know and love, or even people in our own congregation who we've lost. And so I know, Susan, you have had your own personal experience of a near-death experience. And so could you share with us some learnings that you have from that?
Yes. Just about 10 years ago this summer, I almost died. I had massive blood clots in each lung. We don't know where they came from. They just were there, and no one expected me to live. None of the doctors in the ICU, or I was in a medically induced coma for a week, and while they tried to get these blood clots to clear out of my lungs. And the fact that I survived and had done as well as I did just astonished everyone. And so for me, it changed me in a way that it's just very strange to feel like you've received this enormous miracle, and you don't, but you wonder why. You're just so grateful. I'm so grateful. But there's also a little bit of survivor's guilt. But why did I survive? And, other people get a blood clot and they die instantaneously, I think what's happening around us in these days is we're now surrounded by so many people who have been so very, very sick. Some terribly sick at home, others sick in the hospital, so many on ventilators, so many not expected to live. There seems to be almost no sense of who lives and who dies, and who gets real sick and who doesn't. And I think we're going to have a lot of people in our society with a somewhat changed perspective on things. Families have been through an enormous trauma, not being able to be there for their loved one when they're going through these horrible times. And people coming back to life and wondering why they're living and the person in the next 3 beds in the hospital didn't make it. And I think we're going to have to ask those questions as a society, because we're going to be doing this for, it sounds like, months to come, of facing enormous death and enormous loss and fear and all those things that we're going to need to go through together, but have some sense of understanding of each other.
Yeah, I think that those are really important points for us to keep in mind. So thank you for that. Now, Marshall, it's about a year ago, right, that you received a new kidney, and we celebrated that. Is that right? It's about a year ago?
Yeah, it'll be a year on Sunday when this airs, May 3rd, 2019. I got a call in the middle of the night before, saying a kidney was going to be available. Could I be at the hospital at 6 in the morning? And by 1 o'clock that afternoon, after they did a dialysis treatment to get my body ready to deal with the trauma, then I was in surgery for about 6 hours, and here I am with the most highest. My kidney numbers are as good as they've been since I was about 30 years old. So.
That's so wonderful. I remember sitting in the hospital
Yes.
with in the waiting room with Susan and your family, and we were so excited. And so congratulations on this milestone. But what is it like for you as a person who is really living with some real compromises as you go through this pandemic? Is there any wisdom that you want to share from that?
The kidneys functioning great, and I'm great from that perspective. But I do have to take immunosuppression drugs, so it means that when everybody else can start going back to church, I'll probably be one of the last that's allowed to go. And I pick on church, but it'll be a while before I'm in a grocery or another store or doing much in any kind of public gatherings. But I.
According to our daughter, it'll be about a year. She definitely wants to protect us.
Yeah, our kids are all pretty confident that we will not be going out anytime soon. And our oldest son actually spent a week as an attending physician on a COVID ICU floor. He's finishing a fellowship in pulmonary critical care, so he had those skills and stepped forward to help ease the load. But for me personally, having lived through that, every day is kind of a bonus for me. And so, I mean, before the transplant surgery and a month after the transplant, I had some other surgery to clean up the wound that had not healed properly. So, I've had about 15 or 16 surgical procedures in the last 3 or 4 years. And so every time I go into the hospital, we kind of make sure everybody knows where the important papers are and all that kind of stuff. And we've already done that kind of stuff. So this is very, very, very new, but wondering about what would happen if something happened to one or the other of us is something we've been doing for the 10 years since Susan almost died. So, I don't know that we're prepared, but we're as prepared as we're going to get for whatever comes. And we just take each day as a good gift from God and try and enjoy it as fully as we can.
Mm-hmm. That perspective is just so important for all of us, no matter what we're facing, and especially in these times, to, again, live in that moment and to celebrate the many, many things and blessings that we have. So Debbie, we're so glad you're here too, and just want to ask you how you're coping, and then, what wisdom you might have to share with us.
We're doing quite well. We're very glad that if this horrible pandemic had to happen, that it's happening at this time of the year when it's warm and it's sunny and we can get outdoors and feel the sun on our face. And my husband and I love to hike, and so we're able to get out to Heritage Park or Kensington or Mayberry State Park. It's easy to social distance there and to get that exercise and to be in touch with nature we find to be very healing. And so that's been important for us, even just to sit in the backyard and identify the birds and listen to the sounds and really get in touch with the natural world and be connected to God's creation in that way helps us feel, I don't know, more rested and stronger and more whole. We've also been lucky that, I think it's lucky. I hope she does too. Our adult daughter, she's 29. She's got her own place. She's got her own job, but she's been sheltering in place with us for the past 3 weeks or so. And it's been wonderful to have her around. And we're developing our own little family traditions around that. Friday night is pizza night. And so we'll order pizza. And it's been great to have her around to stream Netflix and eat popcorn and be around and so on and so forth. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of just what we've been trying to do. I think about how one of the places we love to hike is in the Colorado Rockies, and we love to get up in the mountains. And one of the things about hiking in the mountains, where the terrain is difficult and weather is extremely changeable, and the altitude can cause physical effects on your body. It's a beautiful place to hike, but it's a place where you have to be cautious and respectful of the mountain, because the mountain will always win. And it's very humbling to be up there. And that's what I like about it. It reminds me that I am not the master of all I see, that there are bigger and stronger things than me in the world. And I think about that in this COVID outbreak. It's reminded us all that we are not masters of the universe, right? We were jet setting around and buying things and doing this and doing that. And under the illusion, I think all of us, that we were in control of everything. And I guess the hidden spiritual wisdom in this, and it's a terrible thing, and I don't believe for a moment that God sent it, but that God can speak to us in this, that we aren't in charge. And we have to trust and pray. And there are mysteries, like Susan said. Why do some people get this and others don't? And why do some people die of this and others are asymptomatic? And we just don't know. But the question we continue to ask is, where is God in all of this? And I firmly believe God is in all of this, and that we are learning and finding meaning in all of this.
Thank you. And again, that looking for ways to find meaning really, really is important for us as well. It's a process. It's not something we find meaning right away. And I really appreciate what you said about, we're not saying that God sent the virus to teach us certain things. The virus just is. It just came. But the question is, where can we find God and meaning in the midst of it? So I think that's really important. And I really like what you said about the mountain example. That really resonates a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because we do have that sense that we are in charge, and everything, our schedule, our everything is something we decide, and we forget that that's and we're humbled during this time to be reminded that some kind of virus that we can't even see has just really completely changed our lives, totally, for all of us, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Any other thoughts that you have, Debbie, that you would like to share?
I was so grateful to hear Susan and Marshall's testimony, and how one faces those kinds of adversities, and the reality of our own mortality, and how that can deepen one's faith. My husband and I both had cancer the same year, in 2002. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and as he was recovering from his surgery, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And here it is, 18, 19 years later, we're here to talk about it, so it's all good. But particularly, I remember when I was undergoing chemotherapy, and I had terrible time with chemotherapy. I was really sick through a lot of it. And the spiritual discipline that I chose for myself was to convict myself in the belief that there is manna in every wilderness, and that my task every day was to find 3 ways that day that God had provided manna for me. And it sounds kind of Pollyanna-ish, but it was, to be honest, it was some days very difficult to look and say, what were 3 ways that I felt the presence of God feeding me and sustaining me in this wilderness today? And it took intentional effort many times, but it's always there. We just have to look. And even if it's very difficult to do, to try to find that way that healthcare worker said something right to me that really helped me in due season, or that my dog came up and jumped on me and it was funny, or just silly little stupid things like that. But where was the Holy Spirit moving in this day? And to say thank you. And at least for that moment between the nausea and everything else, for a few moments to have gratitude and prayer to say thank you for feeding me this day. And I'm convinced that's true in this wilderness too. I mean, compared to that time, there's lots of manna for me right now. I have no complaints. I'm like Marshall and Susan said, hey, we're still here. It's all good. Every day's a gift. And to find that place of gratitude helped me get through.
Thank you, Debbie. And thank you, Marshall and Susan. When the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, God provided for them every single day enough food just for that day. The manna would only last for a day, and it would go away, and they'd have to wait for it to come for the next day. And it's such a powerful lesson, especially for the times we're living in. Thanks for reminding us of that, Debbie, because I hope that all of us will be able to look at each day and say, where did we see God, and be very intentional. Where was the manna? What manna do you see? Today, as we're recording this, it's a beautiful, beautiful spring day in Michigan. The birds are singing, the sun is out, which we don't get to see very often. And so just even seeing the sun is manna for our spirits. And being together with colleagues, even through Zoom, is also manna. So I thank you for being a part of our clergy conversation, and we hope that today, this Sunday, May 3rd, that you will be able to reflect on where is the manna, and be able to find just 3 things each day where you can say, God, I see your presence, and it makes all the difference in my life. So thanks so much, and God bless everyone.